How's it going, AL? Happy Tuesday.
What's happening, Garrett?
Not too much. Well, got another power session today, kind of a follow-up on our one from a few weeks ago where we dove into MicroStrategy and just went through the basics of building a report. So I understand we're gonna get into some charts and nice looking graphs today. Is that right?
Yes, this is the fun part of it. So obviously last time we covered kind of the basics, how the data is structured, how to add the data sets. This is where you actually can start actually building the dashboards.
Sounds good to me. Well, it's 1 o'clock and let's get after it.
So for those of you that joined last time, if you recall, to get to the environment where you can build a custom dashboard, you would just click Access Environment here. It's going to automatically bring you up to this blank dashboard. And then as we discussed last time, the first step is adding a data set. I'll kind of just power through this since we already covered it. So we'll use the job summary data set as kind of our example. And what you'll see is all of our attributes and metrics on the left. And then the canvas right here, the large white part in the middle, that's where we're actually going to start to add our visuals. So by default, when you start creating a new dashboard, the first visualization is a grid. So this would just be like if you just wanted a table. And it's super easy to kind of start adding things to it. You would just start to click and you're going to see things add. So I added my job. And let's add, why don't we do our revised contract amount? And you'll see it will start to add on the right there. So this is pretty much how every visual is going to work, is you're going to want some combination of an attribute and a metric. And then what you'll see here is on this editor panel, it will start to tell you what you've added. So here I can see my job is my rows, my columns are my net metric name, and then the actual metrics, the values is my revised contract. So I can add as many as I want here. I can add my job cost, build amount, backlog. It can start to kind of build out. I can also add any additional attributes. So let's say I wanted to look at it by project manager. You'll see now I've got the project manager for each. Let's say I wanted to see it project manager, then job. I can simply drag and drop it. So I can do that two ways. I can grab the column header and move it, or I can do the same thing over on the editor panel on the left here. And here now what you'll see is now it's kind of grouping all of the projects by project manager. And let's say I wanted to see the totals for each PM. If I go up to these three little dots here in the top right of the visual, you'll see an option for show totals. So that's kind of the rule of thumb, is when you're building these visuals, there's a few places you want to check if you want to make any changes. The first is this three dots here, where you're going to have some different options. And then the second most important one is this panel on the left here. So you'll see there's three tabs here. This first one, the editor, that's going to be the attributes and the metrics that are actually making up that visual. The second one here is filters. So there's two different types of filters. We'll probably get to this towards the end, but here's where you could add filters. And then this last one is your settings. So here's where you would actually kind of say, okay, I want it to be this font size, this color, whatever you're trying to kind of actually change for the actual visual appearance of the visual, this is where you would do it. So you can do the table format, here's where I talked about settings, the title bar. So those are kind of the places that you're going to go to when you're making these changes. And this is literally like, I don't want to call it a bottomless pit, but you could spend hours and hours kind of going through all the different settings for all the different charts and visuals. So we're not going to have time to go through them all today. I would encourage you to get in here in your own time, play around with a few things. There's a lot of different cool things you can do with it, but that is kind of the basics of how you would start creating a visual. So obviously that's kind of boring, just creating a table, a grid view. If you want to create something a little more dynamic, a little more visual appealing that tells a story, what you can do here is up at the top is how you would add additional elements to your dashboard. So if you click this one all the way on the left, this is where you would actually go add another visual. So you'll see the different options here. You've got your grid, which we just covered, bar charts, line charts, pie charts, map. This would be if like you wanted to see anything based on location. So you'll see some of the attributes here. You'll see kind of like the pin you would see on Google Maps. That tells you if it's a location attribute. So when you use these maps, you can only use the attributes that have a location associated with it. And then there's some more ones in here that you can kind of play around with. the two that are probably most important, actually, the one that's probably the most important is this KPI. So if you want to see just like the total across a certain metric, you would use this KPI. And then there's a few other custom ones here. These are kind of pretty niche, so I don't know if any of you would get into this, but I would say probably 95% of what you're going to want to do, you could probably cover with the grid, bar, line, pie chart, and these KPIs. So let me show you the KPI first, because that's kind of the most basic. If I add a KPI to the top, or I'm sorry, if I add a KPI, you'll see it adds automatically here. And as you're adding these visuals, it has what's called smart layout, which basically means it's going to snap into place. So I can pick this up here, and if I say, hey, I want this to be on top of the other visual, you'll see that blue line there. It will automatically move it there, fit it to the space, and then I can resize it. And let's say I want to look at all of my revised contract amount. So I'll add it, and it will basically tell me what is the total revised contract amount across all my projects. So that's how we go about adding the KPI. Super straightforward, super easy. Let's say we want to add something a little more fun, a bar chart. Again, it's going to automatically add it. Let's say I want it to be in between my KPI and my table here. It's going to work just like the visual or the grid view below. I'm just going to start clicking the attributes and metrics I want to add. So let's say I want to look at project manager, and I want to look at revised contract amount by project manager. You'll see that it will start to add, or it'll basically total all the contract amounts by project manager. And this is kind of the basis of the bar chart. Same thing, a lot of things you can do with it. If you wanted to sort it, you can right click on either axis and say sort descending, and it will, oops, should probably do it this way, sort descending this way. So here you'll see that it's basically going from the greatest to the smallest amount. A couple other things you can do here is on the left, you'll see when we were looking at just the table view, I only had basic ones, my rows and my columns and metrics. Here I have a lot more options. So I can see, okay, right now, my vertical axis is my contract amount. My horizontal axis is my project manager. Let's say I actually want to look at it by job status too. How many active or closed projects does each of these project managers have? I can drag this here and put it in the break by. And what you'll see is now I can look at it to see, okay, what are the closed jobs they have each, and what are the active? And let's say that's like kind of hard to tell the difference because they're both the same color. I can drag this up here and put it in color by, and now it will give me different colors for each of the statuses. Let's say I still want to see the total amount, so I don't want to see it side by side. I want to see it stacked. I can change it this way, and now I can kind of see, okay, what is the current or the contract amount total, but I can also see it broken down by closed and active. So like I said, these things are really like endless with all the different visuals, but I'm showing you just a few examples of what you can do with it. But again, really the spots you want to look here are on this editor view here and the three dots and these other panels. So Garrett, I know I kind of just monologued and went on a lot for about 7 or 8 minutes. Let me pause and see if you had any questions, what I've shown so far.
No, I think it's good. I mean, obviously we can tell by the table below, you can get pretty in depth with numbers, and people are on the go. It's a busy time of year. Maybe they're scrambling to find what they want. You can really highlight at the top there, things to stick out, and hey, here's what you want to easily digestible right away. So
Yep.
I think that's the main thing that stands out to me is, you can get pretty granular at the bottom, and then, you can pick and choose what you want at the top to really get people going with that easily access information.
Yeah, and that's always our recommendation as well when you're building these dashboards. We like to think of it, there's kind of like 3 components you want to include in it. One is the KPI, whoops, that's kind of giving you those top level, high level picture of how things are going. The visual, which is going to kind of quickly tell you the story. And then the third is going to be that table down at the bottom, which really kind of gives you the details behind the KPI and that visual. So you'll see a lot of the standard dashboards and a lot of the modules and tools in Pronovas are kind of structured that way, because we find kind of having those 3 components really kind of gives you a full picture of what's happening with your data. But like Garrett said, you can also kind of start to use this for the detail. And here's where you can start to do some cool things with how you actually have the visuals interplay with each other. So if you go up to these 3 dots again in the top right, you'll see this option for select target visualization. And if I select this here, what I can do is I can have this bar chart point to both my KPI and my table, and I'm going to apply it. And what that allows me to do is when I click on anything in the bar chart, it's going to filter those visuals that I targeted based on what I've selected. So if I want to look at the active projects that Jack Jones has, see what he's currently working on, now that I've targeted that, I can go in here and I can see the list of all of the projects that he has, and it's also going to update the contract amount. And then if I want to clear it, I just kind of click outside of it in the visual. So things like that, that if you start to add those target visualizations, it makes it really good to turn your dashboards from just being kind of like a static report you pull up once and kind of look at to something that's really more dynamic and allows you to kind of dig in deeper to the different details and different ways to slice and dice the data.
I like it. The charts and colors are the first thing that's catching my eye if I, come in and want to see something. So the ability to drill down on those is super cool.
Yeah. So a couple other things you can do here that helps you kind of dive more into the data, or really kind of make it more kind of stick out to what you need to look at. The first one is called thresholds, and I'll actually show this in the table view. If you go to any of your metrics here, and if you right click on it, you'll see there's an option to create thresholds. So the best way I like to think of it is if you've ever done conditional formatting in Excel, that's basically what thresholds are in the Pronovos custom dashboard builder. So if I add a threshold here and I go to the advanced threshold editor, let's clear it. And I say, hey, I want to know whenever my build amount is less than my revised contract amount, I want you to give me just kind of a light, well, actually, let's do it this way. Let's do it a light blue fill, basically telling me, hey, this project is still ongoing. So I can do that here. And it's basically going to highlight any contract amount where the build amount doesn't equal it. So you can start kind of adding different flags and different ways to basically say, okay, this is something that needs attention here. So you can use those thresholds to highlight different aspects of your data. The second one, we touched on this briefly, is filters. So there's two different ways you can do filters. One, you can add a filter on the left here. Now, if you add a filter to the left here, what this is going to do is it's going to filter your entire dashboard. So if I add job status here and I say active, you'll see everything updates. So it's kind of updating everything you see on the screen. So if you want everything in your dashboard to filter, this is where you would add your filters. If you only want certain visuals to filter, you would go up here and you would select this here. So I would select my element and value filter, and let's say do project manager. And it would work the same way as when we selected the target visualizations. I would point at it and select it. And now we can come in here and say, okay, I only want to look at, let's look at only Earl Grey. And you can do it that way too. So two different ways you can do the filters. There is a third type of filter. It's a little bit more advanced, but it's really cool if you get used to using it. It's called this attribute metric selector. So let's say here, my chart right now is telling me my contract amount. Let's say I also want to look at what my profit is at times. I can add this here and I can target that chart. And when I apply it, now I can say, okay, I'm currently looking at my contract amount. Give me my revised profit instead. So you can kind of toggle between the two. That would basically tell you, okay, what's your profit, what's your contract amount. So you can kind of actually switch out the metrics and the attributes for different charts and visuals. So yeah, that's kind of some of the basics. I know I threw a lot out here. This is the tip of the iceberg. I think the best way to learn this stuff is to really get in there and play around yourself. Try doing different things. There's really, if you can think of it, chances are you can probably build in it or build it in this tool. So I know I have about a minute left, Garrett, so I'll kind of pause there and maybe we can take any questions we might have.
Yeah, for sure. And the recording will also be up on our YouTube channel. So if anyone needs that the link, please feel free to reach out. It looks like we already got a question, Kevin, from Randy.
Are you going to discuss pulling any data from other external sources, so like SQL bases, Salesforce, etc.? So we won't cover that in this here. Pulling it from external data sources, it's a bit more of an advanced topic because what it really comes down to is how the data modeling is structured. So basically how you build the relationships between the external sources and the sources that are automatically pulled into Pronovos. If it is something you are interested in learning more about, reach out to Garrett or Denver if you're still in implementation, and we could set up a time to kind of introduce that topic and some of the things to keep in mind if that was something you wanted to explore.
And then Lou was wondering about moving KPIs from the bottom to the top. So we're just gonna want to, it looks like we want to drag it up there or down.
Yeah, so if you want to move them, you can just kind of pull it down here, down at the bottom like that.
Yeah,
The other thing
I
is,
think we want to make sure we see that blue outline, correct?
correct, yeah. So if you see that kind
Okay.
of where it is, so you'll see there that blue line, that's telling me it's at the bottom. And if you look real closely, you'll see there's actually two. One that's saying, hey, this is gonna go below the table. And the other one that basically says, hey, this is gonna go at the very bottom of the dashboard. One other thing I'll point out that I don't always recommend, but if you're like, I don't like this smart layout, I want to have more freedom in terms of how I rearrange things, you can turn it off, this responsive view editor. And now that's basically going to allow you to move things however you wanted to. So if you wanted to turn that off, I'm sorry, it's right here, freeform layout. So now if I say, hey, I want to overlap things, this gives you kind of more flexibility to rearrange things however you want. Fair warning, if you do this, it is a lot more work to kind of get things to look pretty and nice. So I always am a fan of just sticking in the smart layout mode.
Well, cool. I know we're a minute over here. Maybe give us everyone 30 more seconds if anyone has any more questions. And if not, please feel free to reach out if you have some time to play around there and anything pops up. And if not, looking forward to our next session together.
Sweet.
Well, we'll call it. Thanks everyone for your time, and we'll see you next time. Appreciate it,
Okay,
Kevin.
thanks, Garrett.
You got it.